Good morning. I'm Charles Osgood, and this is Sunday Morning. 5 days after the terrorist attack, you can see, hear, and feel America rising. Although there are many deep wounds that will never heal, Americans everywhere are resolved and determined to rise to the occasion and to carry on. It is still too soon for us to absorb or take full measure of what happened this week. Even those directly involved experienced it not as a whole, but one moment, one person at a time. Martha Teichner will report our cover story.
We know it was a terrible day that changed everything. But how do we comprehend what happened to all those people smiling out at us from the missing posters? How do we explain the accident of survival or sudden heroism? This morning, we try.
That life will never be the same for those directly touched by this tragedy goes without saying. But it is very likely that life will never really be the same for the rest of us as well. Much of what we used to take for granted cannot be taken for granted anymore. Rita Braver will survey this new landscape.
It's not just about airline travel. It's about how safe we feel everywhere in our own country.
I always felt safe as an American, you know, protected. I think a lot of Americans are scared right now.
Later on Sunday morning, our nation changed forever. What lies ahead for all of us?
The hijacked airliners that toppled the World Trade Center struck the downtown of our biggest city. But the impact could be felt in many a small town. Bill Geist will tell us about his.
My hometown offers a magnificent view of New York's spectacular skyline. This past week, that view was radically and tragically altered. So was life in my town, until Tuesday, a refuge from the problems of the outside world.
We have much more still to tell you this morning, stories of hardship and courage, of resolution and hope. First, here are the headlines for this Sunday morning, September 16th, 2001. Sunday is no day of rest for weary searchers combing the rubble at the ruins of New York's World Trade Center. Byron Pitts joins us now. Good morning, Byron.
Good morning, Charles. Around 4 o'clock this morning, rescue teams heard a tapping sound coming from the debris. But since then, nothing. It was another difficult and dangerous night. It has become a city within a city. Workers sleep here, eat here. But as the hours pass and more debris is removed...
Can we find some firemen up there?
This 16-acre site of cement and steel and suffering is primarily a city of death.
What are you guys finding?
Oh, torsos, legs.
Rescue worker Juan Sierra lost a boyhood buddy in Tuesday's disaster. Except for 5 survivors, he and the other volunteers have only found bodies. The body of 3 passengers still strapped in their seats. The body of a flight attendant, her arms bound.
Regular folk aren't supposed to see things like that.
No, not at all. I'm not common folk right now. I don't feel common folk. I have a cause. I have a duty to do right now. As an American citizen.
They are citizen soldiers of sorts, fatigued but fighting. Even the search dogs are exhausted. Some 300 animals, many have needed IVs, and even they need a positive sign. Gerald Lauber with the SPCA.
They're very stressed. There are a lot of body parts, and they're distracted, and these dogs need reward, and the reward is finding somebody alive. If they don't get that reward, then they get depressed.
Depression and despair, and the beginning of what seems like an endless procession of funerals. Fire Department Chaplain Michael Judge died administering last rites to a fallen firefighter.
He was talking to God, and he was helping someone. Can you honestly think of a better way to die?
Pete Gansey was New York's fire chief, one of the first rescuers killed. His son, Chris, spoke at his funeral.
It gives my family some comfort that my father died the way that he would have wanted to, with his men. He wouldn't have it any other way. Pete Gansey was a fireman to the bitter end.
New York's mayor, Rudolph Giuliani.
When the tower came down, he got his men out, he sent them north, and he went south right into the danger to get more of them out.
Get them out. It is still the mission today.
There's people there alive. We have to get them out.
How can you still believe that at this point?
They're there. They did. I know they did.
This morning at Ground Zero, these are the official numbers. 159 people confirmed dead. 99 victims have been identified. 4,972 people still missing. Charles?
Correspondent Byron Pitts, thank you. We now know that there were efforts to keep Tuesday morning's tragedy from unfolding. Bob Orr can tell us about those. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Charles. Well, we do know now that as the attack unfolded in New York and Washington, the FAA and the military desperately tried to do something about it. Fighter jets were scrambled to New York and also to Washington. They were too late to do anything about the attack on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. The important thing is, at that point, there was one hijacked airplane left. That was United Airlines Flight 93. It was over western Pennsylvania. It had turned off critical radar information, but it was on a line for Washington. Administration sources tell us now that there was a high-level conference call convened at some point, and they were discussing their options. And at that moment, there were two F-16s, we were told, about 60 miles from that plane, armed with air-to-air missiles. Administration sources say if the plane had continued on to Washington, they were prepared to shoot down a civilian airliner. As we know now, the plane crashed in Pennsylvania. No decision had to be made, but all the planning indicated that the U.S. government was prepared to take an extraordinary action. Charles?
Bob Orr in Washington, thank you. President Bush and top administration officials meet again today at Camp David to plan their response to Tuesday's attack. For more on that, we turn to David Martin at the Pentagon. David?
Good morning, Charles. As I walked into the building this morning, you could see the offices of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff were a beehive of activity, obviously further refining, drawing up plans for this new war on terrorism, while at the same time the recovery effort continues. They have now raised part of that roof which had collapsed, which will open up an area where they can probably find more bodies. Meanwhile, a spokesman for the Pakistani government says a Pakistani delegation will visit the Taliban rulers of Afghanistan tomorrow and demand that they turn over Osama bin Laden or else face U.S. retaliatory strikes. Now, the U.S. has been trying for years to pressure the Taliban into turning bin Laden over, and they have always refused. The hope, obviously, is now that there is the threat of military action. The Taliban will see this in a different light. Frankly, if the Taliban doesn't turn him over, the U.S. chances of getting bin Laden are very, very slim because it really does not know where he is on a day-to-day basis. Charles?
David Martin at the Pentagon, thank you. In a moment, America Rising and an historic voyage that still goes on.
School has started all over our area, and getting your child ready every day makes your life busier than ever. So saving time is important. That's why 9 Eyewitness News this morning brings you exclusive instant weather and traffic. You'll know which roads to avoid and how to plan your day without the wait. Plus, you'll get expanded weather and traffic reports on the 9. And with our new feature on local schools, you'll always stay informed. Ease your stress. Let 9 Eyewitness News this morning keep you on top of what's happening in your child's school. Weekdays from 5 to 7 a.m.
Want more from a sport utility? Test drive the all-wheel drive Subaru Outback. More ground clearance than a Ford Explorer Sport. More cargo space than a Jeep Cherokee. More miles per gallon than any leading midsize SUV. Add a smooth car-like ride and you have a sport utility with a whole lot more. Outback, the world's first sport utility wagon.
Now you can get an APR as low as 2.9% on all 2002 Outback models.
When it comes to trucks, Toyota has it all. Award-winning compact and full-size trucks. Tough, dependable, and including one of the most affordable trucks sold in America. Toyota, the right one for you.
The neighborhood I live in is not really a nice neighborhood. I want my kids to become someone instead of them hanging out in the street. So that's why I turned to the voucher program. It helps out a lot of low-income people. My kids can see that things are getting better by coming to the private school. Without a voucher program, there wouldn't be any options. I'm showing them now that they can be whatever they want to be.
Judge dedicated to justice.
The law, it's a balancing act. The only way that it works is if it works the same for all of us.
Compelling stories, as honest as it gets.
Objection.
We're done.
Emmy nominees Tyne Daly.
Stop that right now! This is bordering on abuse.
And Amy Brenneman.
If you get so much as a jaywalking ticket, you're going to be doing hard time before you can legally buy a beer. Understood?
Don't miss the season premiere of Judging Amy, CBS Tuesday, September 25th.
And now a page from our Sunday morning almanac, September 16th, 1620, 381 years ago today. The day the Mayflower, after a few false starts, set sail from England for the New World. For 2 months, the faith of the pilgrims on board was sorely tested by storm clouds and heavy seas. But nothing diminished their hope for a place to live freely, the life they chose. To that end, they signed the Mayflower Compact, the first document to establish a form of self-government in North America. In December, they finally stepped ashore to found the Plymouth Colony, a wilderness where life was hard, but to them, a haven. Many millions have followed over the centuries, each a pilgrim in his or her own way, all seeking to freely live the lives they chose. To be sure, storm clouds have sometimes threatened, and we find our own faith put to the test. But to this day, the hope of a free life in a new world still lives undimmed.
And to our children's children tell how good the Lord hath been. And to our children's children's children tell how good the Lord hath been. How good the Lord hath been. And to our children's children tell how good the Lord hath been.
Our Sunday morning almanac for September 16th, 2001. Ahead, our nation's will and determination tested anew. Martha Teichner will begin our coverage of America Rising.
Introducing new Kellogg's Special K Red Berry cereal. Crunchy sweet flakes, now with slices of real strawberries, right in the box. Looking good, never tasted so great. Kellogg's Special K Red Berries. It's new.
I'd like a latte, please.
Do you have an appointment? Grab the ticket. We'll be with you in just a minute. Yeah.
Coffee houses are popular. Very popular. Well, what if you just want coffee house style coffee in an instant? Folgers Cafe Latte. Rich, creamy, delicious coffee house coffee without the coffee house. So it's not the coffee you drink to take a break from your day. It's the coffee you drink to break into it. Folgers Cafe Latte.
Magazine? Book? Anybody?
Shocking tragedies have occurred and America is in mourning. A long period of uncertainty and recovery awaits us all. The American Red Cross is providing life-saving assistance, including precious blood, food, shelter, and grief counseling. We honor our heroic relief workers, victims, and their families. Please call 1-800-GIVE-LIFE to donate blood or 1-800-HELP-NOW to offer financial support. Together, we can save a life.
With a new week about to begin, there is a sense of America rising. A new resolve and determination are in the air. We've begun to take our first steps away from those dreadful moments 5 mornings ago. Our cover story is reported now by Martha Teichner.
It was beautiful in New York City on Tuesday morning. Achingly, impossibly, incongruously beautiful. At 8:48, when the horror began. By now, we've seen the pictures over and over and over. The planes hitting. The towers collapsing. the towers collapsing. The Pentagon in flames. They are indelible images burned into world history. And still, we cannot grasp the magnitude.
God, I saw the plane hit the building. I can't say anything.
I heard people shouting. I stopped at like 68, and there's a woman in a wheelchair, and I got her in the strap wheelchair and just carried her down the steps and carried her down 68 floors, man. And then we got.
How can we comprehend a morning on which thousands of people, unknowing, woke up, looked at themselves in the mirror for the last time, and got dressed to die? Who could have imagined men and women who just went to work that day, jumping, falling?
Helpless. Absolutely helpless. I don't even want to think about how many cops and firemen were in there at the time, other than civilians. Don't even want to think about it.
Was it God or fate or nothing but luck that determined which New York City firemen survived? That for some reason made somebody late enough that morning to live?
Instead of making a left to go to the elevators, I made a right and I went into the concourse, and I went to an optometrist shop, and I was being fitted for reading glasses. I needed new glasses.
What made Michael LaMonaco, the chef at Windows on the World, decide to run an errand before heading up to the restaurant on the 107th floor of the North Tower?
And when I got out to the street, I knew something terrible had happened. I thought my people. I mean, I thought all my people.
Day or night, 7 days a week, there was never a time when his people were not there.
I saw a fireball of... I'm completely sorry that I witnessed any of this. When that second tower burst into flames, I hadn't lost hope, but I thought, another human being can't do this to people. It can't be.
Since that moment on that day, Michael LaMonaco's obsession, shared with every boss from every company at the World Trade Center, has been to find out who's safe, who's dead, but most of all, who's missing.
Good afternoon, Beacon Restaurant and Windows on the World hotline.
By Wednesday, a Windows on the World hotline had been set up at another restaurant. Unaccounted for out of 500 employees, maybe 50.
I lost my sister. She works at Windows of the World. This is her picture here on my right, Lucille Francis. This is my 50th birthday when we took our pictures together. So someone look carefully. This one is on my right, Lucille.
One after another, Michael LaMonaco and Elizabeth Ortiz, Human Resources Director for Windows, listened to the scared, sad voices.
You've got this list. On this list, it's missing, 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 missing.
It's a really grim experience. We haven't lost anybody yet. We can't say lost. They're just, they haven't been found, so they're missing. I mean, how else can we feel? We have to have some hope.
When Windows on the World opened, food critic Gail Green wrote, "Down below is all of Manhattan, and helicopters and clouds. Everything to hate and fear is invisible," she said. And so it seemed, even after the 1993 bombing of the World Trade Center.
Well, the first thing it was when I joined it was a symbol of American and New York courage, and Windows Public Place was there as a symbol of democracy and triumph over evil.
How ironic that seems now. Elizabeth Ortiz and her assistant Christina Quinn, together on Friday, made the rounds, found themselves along with thousands of others trying to find names on lists, touching them the way people touched the names on the Vietnam Wall. The missing smile at us. We peer into the privacy of their past happiness. Like the population of a whole lost city, they are gathered spirits haunting us. Missing, Jose Nunez, one of the Windows on the World kitchen crew. At the end of the day, Elizabeth and Christina have learned that one man is dead, not missing. That's all. They have no news for the family of assistant pastry chef Norberto Hernandez. For one heartbreaking night, they thought he was in a hospital in New Jersey.
Once we got there, it was the wrong person. It was by somebody by the name of Greg Hernandez. It wasn't him, so...
Wrong Hernandez.
Yes.
So they continue to look. They pray, as thousands of other families pray, that their loved ones will be found alive, not here. We see the bucket brigades, the rubble mountains. They are oblivious to them. They are hardly aware of the threat of war, these families. They live with their hope and their Xeroxed pictures. Missing, Mohammed Saladin Chowdhury, 39 years old, from Bangladesh. He had a master's degree in physics, but worked as a banquet waiter. His brother and his cousin are devastated.
If he's alive, that's fine. If he's not alive, still we have to come to kind of conclusion that, okay, this is...
What if you never find out?
Let's hope that...
Hopefully not.
Let's hope that you will find it. We'll find it. We can hope.
If for no other reason, to see his son. Farkat Saad Chowdhury was born at 9:13 a.m., September 13th, almost exactly 48 hours after his father, like 5,000 other people, went to work as usual and disappeared. We have seen what happened that day, and still we cannot grasp the magnitude.
Ahead, the investigation.
Abner, we're rich.
We're rich?
It's our new litter. It's got diamonds in it.
Diamonds! What's a diamond?
A diamond is a very valuable...
You are mistaken, my friends. The diamonds are crystals in new Tidy Cats Crystals blend. The clay traps moisture. The crystals eliminate odor. And that is the only reason I agreed to live here with the likes of you.
Whatever.
New Tidy Cats Crystals blend.
I still think they're diamonds.
While Mike was putting up his own for sale sign, someone was helping his neighbors John and Diane with plans to sell their home. As Mike spent Saturday figuring out legal agreements and guessing his home's value, someone was preparing a counteroffer so John could help at the school fundraiser. And while Mike and his wife were reevaluating their asking price for the third time, someone was closing the sale on John and Diane's home. You've got a life. We let you live it. We're realtors. Real estate is our life.
Need help deciding? Go to thenewsteel.com.
Our guarantee is our promise.
If you're not happy with your glasses, you can bring them back. No questions.
That's what LensCrafters' 30-day money-back guarantee is all about.
Every day brings new developments in the investigation of the terror attacks. Just last night, authorities announced a second arrest in connection with the case. Although much about the plot is still shrouded in mystery, Jim Stewart tells us one thing is already chillingly clear. The terrorists knew exactly what they were doing.
The FBI now has 2 people in custody, and authorities say both are believed to have, quote, direct knowledge of Tuesday's attack. Meanwhile, it is now clear the FBI had been looking for 2 of the hijackers for several weeks before Tuesday's attack took place. The 2 men were believed to be associated with the bombing of the USS Cole last year outside Yemen. It now appears that many, if not most of the men who attacked us on Tuesday did not quietly slip across our borders in the dead of night or even come here in disguise. They lived among us in the open for a long, long time.
I'd see him come and go, and I'd wave at him, never talk to him.
He was my neighbor. That's scary.
FBI agents weren't breaking into secret hideaways this week. They were carting out evidence from homes in Florida and apartments in Massachusetts openly rented by the men who would become hijackers. Some of the hijackers spent more than a year learning how to fly in Florida and elsewhere. They had credit cards, rental cars, even frequent flyer memberships. So the question that faces investigators is a simple one. How did we miss them? And could there be more?
We will never be able to protect everything, everywhere, all the time, from every potential adversary and every modality of attack. Not in a free and open society such as the United States.
Frank Salufo is a terrorism expert at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. He says that while the men may have been living in plain sight, they were members of groups that are difficult to penetrate.
We need to get within the decision-making chain of these organizations. And as you know, terrorism tends to germinate within very small cells. If you compromise one cell, you don't bring the whole chain down.
Intelligence expert and author James Bamford.
The cells, in addition, are made up of blood relatives or clan members. It's almost impossible to put somebody in there, especially somebody from the United States.
The presumption is that these cells of men did not act alone. Someone had to pay for the flight schools. There were apartments to be rented, credit cards to be paid. James Bamford says they had a lot of help.
Was that they apparently got a lot of support from people who could actually fly planes, like pilots and so forth. Finding these people, getting them, recruiting them, getting them to fly to the United States and agree to commit suicide.
So the FBI is now looking for as many as 100 people. They've done it successfully in the past. It's believed that most, if not all, the suspects who attempted to blow up the World Trade Center towers in 1993 were caught. Many of those involved in the bombing of 2 U.S. embassies in Africa in 1998 were arrested. But the awful truth is that even though terrorists have been jailed, other terrorists have been taking notes, learning from their past failures. And no one has been a better student than Osama bin Laden.
If you defend against one form of attack, the terrorist alters his modus operandi. If we defend against one particular target, you force them to select from an endless number of other soft targets that they can choose.
The deliberate and deadly attacks which were carried out yesterday against our country were more than acts of terror. They were acts of war.
So while George Bush may have declared war on terrorism, Frank Salufo says the USA needs to develop new weapons.
You don't just knock on bin Laden's cave and say, hi, we're here to join. We have to remember terrorists don't frequent the cocktail circuit. These aren't Boy Scouts. These aren't good people. We absolutely must recruit people with blood on their hands to save the shedding of innocent blood, especially Americans.
And we'll need help from other countries as well, principally from Pakistan, a nation that's overwhelmingly Islamic but has helped in the past.
They did hand over the 2 most wanted terrorists at the time. Mir Milkazi was responsible for the bombings, the shootings outside of the CIA, and Ramzi Youssef was the mastermind behind the World Trade Center bombing.
But there is no shortage of people willing to kill Americans. For whatever reason, religious, cultural, there are more than a few Osama bin Ladens waiting in the wings.
We need to be in this for the long haul. This is a protracted struggle. This is a long-term struggle.
Save a life.
There is an understandable anger in our country against whoever is responsible for this week's outrage. But we want to be certain that this righteous anger is not misplaced. John Blackstone reports.
أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله.
In California's Silicon Valley, the Islamic call to prayer does not go unheeded.
My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, I would like to greet you with the Islamic greeting.
They are high-tech engineers and computer programmers, laborers and students, Americans by birth and recent immigrants.
We are as much in grief as any common American citizen which is grieving and crying on this tragedy.
But these Muslims worry some may blame them because of how they worship or where they come from.
This is what America is all about. It's a nation of immigrants. We're all immigrants.
You have an American family.
Yes, yes, they are truly American.
Malika Khan has 5 American children. One of her sons was on the staff of a California congressman and has now gone on to work at the White House. You must have worried when you heard that maybe the White House was a target.
You won't believe how much I was worried. I was shaking.
Among the other Americans at the mosque was Wahid Kazem, a member of the Santa Clara Police Department. What does it mean to be an American?
For me, it means life, because I lost my initial life back in Afghanistan. And everything that I have, everything that I am is as a result of this country.
He served in the U.S. Army and will never forget the day he became an American citizen.
It hurts that at times people look at me still and they don't see that. And I know that in a lot of people's eyes, I will never be an American.
When you haven't done anything wrong, how do you prove you're innocent?
For Carol Hayashino, comparing the World Trade Center to Pearl Harbor has led to other thoughts. How Americans of Japanese descent were rounded up to spend the war in internment camps. They were suspect because they looked like the enemy.
When my father left camp, he took 2 of these signs off the fence post as a reminder.
This time, Carol Hayashino says, America must remember not to unleash anger on the innocent.
Hate and violence is not American. What's American is hope. And you see it on those families' faces in New York. And you see it in the firefighters that are looking for a survivor. That's what America's about.
Correspondent John Blackstone. From President Bush on down, there has been talk of war over the past few days. And at war, we most certainly appear to be. But with whom, exactly? Afghanistan seems the immediate and most obvious answer. Alan Fizzy has that story.
If America goes to war with Afghanistan, the battle will pit the world's richest nation against one of the poorest. The country devastated by more than 20 years of continuous warfare.
I think it's already the Stone Age.
Yeah.
I mean, 80% of Kabul was destroyed, and just the journey to the clinic, we're always just amazed at how much rubble, how much, there's still tanks which are strewn, and just the evidence of war is all around.
Go back down to this one here.
Which one?
Vicky and Mark Timlin spent the last 7 months in Afghanistan. The head office of their charity, Hope Worldwide, ordered them to leave after the attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. Afghanis, they say, were as stunned by the attacks as everyone else.
They wanted to feel the grief of the Americans as well. That there definitely wasn't a sense of jubilation that this happened. There was a sense of, wow, this is terrible. And they just wanted to know exactly what the images were like, how the planes crashed, how many people died.
The Timlins believe it is Afghan culture that provides Osama bin Laden his best protection.
They see him as a guest and they'll protect him, they'll look after him, and that's just the general culture. They do that with anyone.
Osama bin Laden is a Saudi Arabian who went to Afghanistan to fight the Soviets after they invaded in 1979. The shadowy figure, who is known to hide in caves, is believed to be the youngest son of 24 brothers in a family whose hugely successful construction business earned him a fortune believed to exceed $200 million. He used it in the Afghan refugee camps of Pakistan to recruit and train dedicated young fighters, slowly building a fanatical network of his own called Al-Qaeda, the base.
The problem for the U.S. is that the name is just that, a name. Bin Laden has no real base, no sitting target. And even if he could be killed, it wouldn't necessarily mean the end of Al-Qaeda. Bin Laden is as much a phenomenon as he is a man, one expert here said, and you can't kill an idea.
And he has an heir apparent, a trusted lieutenant whose son recently married one of bin Laden's daughters. The ceremony was one of the last times bin Laden was seen in public. His followers train with video games like this one, shooting at former President Clinton. No small irony in light of the fact that bin Laden began with American help. The CIA and other Western intelligence services were supplying hardware and training to the Afghan fighters bin Laden recruited to fight the Soviets. Just as it was then, ordinary Afghanis seem resigned to the next phase of U.S. involvement in their country, Vicky Timlin says. Another case of, here we go again.
70% of the nation, the population, is women and children. So obviously these are the most vulnerable because so many of the men have died in so many years of war. They've just gone out to fight.
And if it does come to a war, the fight will be a desperate one.
If they fight, they definitely fight very hard, and they fight to the end.
They don't have a fear of dying?
They don't, no, because in their mind, they're just fighting for their country, they're fighting for what's right.
Ahead, America rising, but already changed.
You can look at the world with a sense of hope or futility. And in my opinion, hope is a better companion. And so I hope that one day we will do more for the people of developing nations by answering the cry for family planning services. We will offer health care, contraception, and sex education. And we will watch how this act transforms lives. My hope is that one day there will no longer be a third world. There will only be one world.
As time flows on, there are places we return to again and again. Places that comfort us with their serenity. Places that astound us with their beauty. Places where our memories come to life. Precious places, timeless places, places that with your help can endure forever. I'm Paul Newman. Help the Nature Conservancy save the last great places around the world.
Looking back on this week's awful events, sometimes it's the small details that are the most telling. We have a reporter's notebook from Lee Cowan.
After the violence came the silence. The deafening noise of tragedy blew into a quiet place to rest. In the lobby of a hotel across the street from Ground Zero, the echoes of those no longer here seemed to whisper at every turn. From a reservation computer begging for a login, to a fire alarm begging to be logged off. An elevator propped open, just waiting.
There are a host of eerie scenes in the wake of this disaster, but perhaps no place really describes how sudden it all happened than here. This is the restaurant in the Hilton Millennium Hotel at the World Trade Center. At the time of the blast,
It was breakfast time. Coffee cups still filled with coffee, breakfast plates now covered in dust. Just fragments of a moment frozen in time. The last moment of what used to be normal.
I was doing my morning walk, and I thought, which at my age is a good idea.
Val Coleman strolled into the World Trade Center at 8:30 Tuesday morning. He walked out just 15 minutes before the first plane hit.
When you were in there, just a normal day, hundreds of people teaming around the building?
People coming in and out, and I walked to the World Trade Center just to inquire about a bus.
By the time he made it back to his apartment, the view at his 39th-story window had suddenly changed.
And they're gone. They're just not there anymore.
And so had his view of life.
And then you begin to think about the people who were in there at the time of the collapse. And that's terrifying. And it's all taking place exactly in front of you, like a, I don't know, like a Brecht play or something. Just a huge collapse of civilization.
We headed north about half a block, and we heard the roar of the building coming down.
Captain Dennis Tardillo was one of the first on the scene. He and his men didn't meet death on Tuesday, but they now feel guilty that they cheated it.
Another 30 seconds, another floor higher, we wouldn't have gotten out. And with so many dead, why are we here?
All the men in his company came back from the towers, but they came back different.
I want to close my eyes and open them and see the towers. I'm hoping it's a dream, but I have a feeling it's reality. It did happen, correct?
The blessing, some say, about the fog of war is that sometimes not everything is remembered. But like the cloud over Manhattan that hasn't disappeared, the thought of what used to be lingers as well.
Correspondent Lee Cowan. In the long view of history, it may be that September 11th, 2001 will be remembered as the day America's new century began. For on that day, as Rita Braver tells us, we did enter a new era.
Hey guys, you can get some help over here. Carry this guy to the ambulance. Need a little help, no? Get him over.
I really did think as Americans, we were one of the safest people to see this happen. It's real scary.
Don't go in there. This building's going to come down.
I think Americans feeling scared and hurt and somewhat lost. I don't think they really thought that it can happen here in America.
The grief, the shock, the outrage are only part of the story.
The battlefield now is here. The other side has learned how to make us a target.
Pulitzer Prize-winning author David Halberstam has written a shelf full of books on U.S. culture and history. He says that Americans who've come to expect free and easy times in the wake of the Cold War's end must start looking at the world in a new way.
We thought we were immune, that our power was applicable everywhere, or that no one dared do anything other than on a relatively small scale. That's over.
And we're only beginning to understand the long-term impact, all the ways in which our daily lives will be affected by the terrible legacy of September 11th, 2001.
IDs, please.
Law enforcement will be more visible on our streets, anxiety higher. The great symbols of America. Now, we fear they are potential targets.
Grand Coulee Dam or Lake Powell and nuclear facilities, there could be other areas. I mean, it kind of opens the mind to all sorts of horrible circumstances.
Access to our landmarks will be more strictly controlled. There are 6-hour waits at some border crossings. Gasoline prices are likely to go up, as often happens when there's a conflict in the Middle East. And of course, air travel will be more tense and cumbersome.
I travel for a living. I'm in sales. I don't know if I want to do this.
anymore.
Though most airports are starting to reopen, Reagan National, closest to the nation's capital, is closed indefinitely. You know, we are used to dashing through this airport. Show my ID. Is closed indefinitely. You know, we are used to dashing through this airport. Show my ID, get my e-ticket, run through security, and I am off.
You know, those days are over, and, you know...
David Stempler of the Air Travelers Association says that the country has got to rethink the entire airport security system, turning it over to a uniformed federal security force like the U.S. Customs Service.
We have asked for years that this security function ought not be provided by private companies like airlines. They're really not equipped to do that, and when they do it, they subcontract it up to someone else at the lowest bid.
And Stempler says no matter who's doing security.
A lot of checks, a lot of double checks, and there's going to be a lot of nervous people all over the place.
There is plenty to be nervous about. A just-released CBS News New York Times poll finds that 85% of Americans now favor military retaliation.
I think it's deserving for whoever was behind all this. They deserve to get what's coming to them.
Doesn't U.S. retaliation just provoke another round of terrorism?
Well, it may provoke another round of terrorism, but there's another round of terrorism coming in any event.
Former U.S. Senator and Defense Secretary William Cohen, now a CBS News consultant, says that the U.S. must react with the same resolve as it did after Pearl Harbor. Are we talking about a return to the draft?
That's conceivable. I don't think it's necessary at this point, but I think whatever it takes. We've seen now the terrible damage that can be done by an aircraft loaded with fuel. But there are even more dangerous methods that they are contemplating. Biological warfare that could infect our entire population. A chemical weapon, possibly even small nuclear weapons.
Cohen says the only way the nation can head off new terrorist attacks is by establishing a high-powered global intelligence network. But that brings different problems.
How do we get it? Do we resort to racial or ethnic profiling, something that we have resisted and should resist very strongly in a democratic society? But is that an issue that will come to the fore?
It has already arrived, with calls for tighter border controls and new visa and immigration restrictions. Dan Stein is executive director of the Federation for American Immigration Reform.
We certainly have to do a better job screening people from certain countries where there's known to be terrorist operatives. We also shouldn't be admitting people for who their presence here isn't in the U.S. national interest.
Aliens attempting to enter with fraudulent documents.
There's a difference between security and being prejudiced. And I'd like to see us be able to walk that fine line. I think it's one of the things that makes us so strong, the breadth of our and diverse quality of our population, that we are a beacon to so many other people in the world.
So this is a defining moment for our nation. A test of whether the unity and patriotism on display this week will endure, with the prospect of more bloodshed to come and of changes to our way of life that we haven't even begun to contemplate.
No one is safe. We're all on the front lines in this war.
Ahead for America Rising, examples to emulate.
Go to Blockbuster and pick up a free CBS sneak peek video.
Looking good.
See what's hot on television this fall.
Oh, again? Okay, good.
It's only at Blockbuster, and it's free.
The healing, the investigation, the latest on the aftermath, and of America Rising. This week on The Early Show with Bryant Gumbel and Jane Clayson.
Simon Baker and Dabney Coleman, The Guardian, premieres CBS Tuesday, September 25th.
They open up to late-night fun, to Sunday family outings. From the bus, to the train, to destinations all over the world. They open up to the road to success. And with hundreds of new buses and trains, they bring people together. More than 1 million people like you step through them every day. Every day, Metro. opens doors.
The Washington, D.C. region has been recognized for the work ethic, productivity, and skill of its workforce. The exceptional quality of our labor force has played a significant part in the achievements of our home and our country, and we continue to grow through the pride of the people who make this hometown work.
Phillips provides services for families and their children with severe behavioral, emotional, and learning disabilities. Braganeer Masonry Contractors Incorporated, United Planning Organization.
For people who have to deal with the harsh realities of life, there is hope. There is Volunteers of America. Volunteers of America serves the emotional, physical, and spiritual needs of more than 1.5 million people a year. Volunteers of America. There are no limits to caring. Find out how you can help. Call 1-800-899-0089 today.
Bruce Johnson, weekends at 6 and 11 on 9 Eyewitness News.
It's Sunday morning on CBS.
Our hearts have gone out this week to all the thousands of victims of this vile atrocity and to their grieving families.
God, please be with my dad.
We have now seen what damage hatred can do, what sorrow fanaticism can bring about.
Carry this guy to the ambulance.
In a sense, every one of us in this country has been wounded. The dreadful scenes burned into our consciousness forever, leaving scars that will never go away. Yet these awful, depressing days have also shown us inspiring things. We have seen 1,000 touching scenes of love and kindness, of sacrifice, bravery, loyalty, and heroism. We in this country have been drawn closer together. We have come to appreciate each other more, and our country more. Whatever our differences, in age or race, faith or politics, we are indeed one nation, indivisible. Maybe it took a jarring shock and a terrible loss to make us better realize what blessings we have here and what is truly important in our lives. We, the people, are America. United we stand. And to say that we love America means nothing if it doesn't mean that we love and care about one another.
Right on target. Now there's a men's hair color made to target only your gray hair. Grecian 5. It's right on target. In 5 easy minutes, Grecian 5 targets only the gray hair, replaces it with subtle tones like your own natural color. Right on target. It matches the rest of your hair for a subtle, natural look. Grecian 5 targets only the gray.
The real story will never be captured from a safe distance, only discovered by those who delve beneath the surface. When was the last time something you read challenged you? The New York Times. Expect the world.
Even at the most terrible of times, there are important lessons to be learned from history. Mark Phillips has some good examples.
The cloud of smoke and debris that enveloped Manhattan as the Trade Center fell smothered more than life. More than buildings collapsed here. The American sense of security disintegrated in a heap as well. Gone was that feeling that history, with its often destructive consequences, happened somewhere else, far away, across the water. If one phrase was repeated over and over in the aftermath vigils New Yorkers have held, it was that things will never be the same, and that's certainly true. But recent history contains lessons on human resilience. Things may never be exactly the way they were, but things will be okay, in a different kind of way. Where do the lessons come from? From places like Sarajevo, where the destruction came not in one blast from the blue, but over years, where life was shattered daily, where not just buildings, but bodies and minds were broken.
You lose people, you lose friends, you lose family, and that can never be compensated. There is no compensation for that, so everything else material can be rebuilt.
Arnel Hecimovic lived through the 3.5 years of the Sarajevo siege and saw the city rebuild itself and its people put their lives back together. What choice did they have?
Human spirit is something that I believe can never be conquered, and many tried. You have to get on. You have to get on with it. You have to try to just think that better things will come, and you have to adjust. There is no other way. There is simply no other way.
Another example, Beirut. Vast swaths of it leveled in a decade of civil war, terrorist bombings, and foreign invasion. The Paris of the Middle East had its heart ripped out. Whether or not hearts can ever repair themselves, the city did. The wounds of hatred may never fully heal, but enterprise and a will to get on with life has brought back some of the former glory. So what of this Beirut on the Hudson? Terror did this, terror that may not be over. How do you live with that? Britain knows. IRA bombs have created scenes of destruction which may not rival New York's, but which were bad enough. Londoners have lived with terror for more than 3 decades during the so-called Troubles in Northern Ireland. The response? To rebuild, to show that while terrorism might cause death and destruction, the only sensible approach is to prove that life could not be permanently disrupted. Call it defiance. And call it vigilance, even if that involves police checkpoints around town, surveillance cameras, and some suspension of civil liberties. Other defiance, Israel. Only weeks after a suicide bomber killed himself and 15 others in Jerusalem, the pizzeria has reopened, and Israelis, including transplanted Americans like Ed Reddig, adjust.
Those tools are this same process that gets you out of bed in the morning and doesn't keep you, cowering under your bed sheets every morning. You have to get up, you have to get out, you have to go about your life in the most normal way possible.
History is full of examples of cities and peoples rising from the ashes. London after the Blitz, certainly, but also Berlin, and perhaps most famously, Dresden, after the most notorious firebombing of the Second World War. And Hiroshima, perhaps the greatest example of them all. What does dusting yourself off and starting all over again take? Resolve, certainly, character, and those who have been there say something else.
Community spirit is something that comes up on the surface to help less fortunate ones, to help fellow ones, and just to try to get through this.
The sense of drawing together.
Absolutely.
It's a feeling that's already been evident among New Yorkers, as they now face the test so many others have faced and passed.
Next, memories of the Twin Towers.
Enter a new era of discovery at Bristol-Myers Squibb, where groundbreaking genetic research is underway.
Winning the Tour de France was a victory for cancer medicines. But Luke, it's just the start of incredible things to come.
At the Bristol-Myers Squibb Center for Applied Genomics, researchers strive to unlock the secrets of breast cancer, Alzheimer's, and diabetes to lead the way in new frontiers against disease.
Hope, triumph, and the miracle of medicine. Bristol-Myers Squibb Company.
Whatever you're looking for, you'll find it on Switchboard.com, the free online yellow pages with businesses, people, and products nationwide, plus maps and directions to help you get there. Switchboard.com. It's the yellow pages electrified.
In this time of need, the American...
In attacking the towers of the World Trade Center, the terrorists succeeded in destroying the two tallest symbols of New York City. They may or may not be rebuilt, but either way, the spirit they represented will not fade, as Richard Schlesinger will now show you.
From the very beginning, the twins were stars. In 1972, a student filmmaker named Gary Kaskell was so fascinated with the construction of the 110-story buildings, he made this movie about them. The film, like the towers and the city they once dominated, is loud and brassy and hard to ignore. Grandstanders and headline grabbers have always known one shortcut to the front page ran up the sides of these towers. Mountain climbers inched up to the top. Before he did this man was known to only a few people as George Willig. After this, he was known by millions as the human fly.
Have you ever climbed another building? No.
Would you like to climb another building?
I don't know. I'll find out.
Then there was Philippe Petit, who thought it would be fun to dance on a wire between the two towers.
When I see a beautiful place to put my wire, I cannot resist.
He was arrested. The human fly was fined. All the stunts that took place at the towers were illegal, but they were never evil until last week, when the towers' very size made them a target. There are a lot of numbers to describe how big the Twin Towers were, and even by New York standards, they are impressive. 50,000, the number of people who work there every day. There are towns in America that aren't that big. 10048, the zip code assigned just to the Twin Towers. And thousands upon thousands, the number of photographs Jay Maisel has taken of them.
It was New York. This is what New York was about. This was like, here I am, the Twin Towers. Like me or not, you're going to see me from every place in the city.
Maisel has photographed them in every season, at every time of day, and in every kind of light.
They acted as, beautiful objects in the center of an environment. They turned red, they turned gold, they turned silver. Sometimes they were just white, and then they were incredible. And a very amazing quality when all the lights were on, too. And some people would ask me, how do you get them to turn all the lights on at once? That's when they were glowing gold. Sometimes they would just disappear, and the very, very tops of them would show.
The Twin Towers were Maisel's neighbors for their entire lives. His home is not far from where they lived and died. Last Tuesday, he watched from his rooftop.
At the moment I looked out, I saw this obscene orange and black blooming thing, like a flower. And it's very hard to realize what I was looking at. Afterwards, I just kept shooting. That's all I could do. They could have taken out the Statue of Liberty. That would have been a better symbol. But they couldn't cause as much heartbreak.
Only rarely has there been as much heartbreak as now. The very numbers that once made the towers so great, the number of floors they tolerated, the number of people they accommodated, now make the tragedy so much greater.
And I've looked out the window for 35 years at these things, and I loved them, and they were beautiful to me. And they're not there. They're just not there.
Richard Schlesinger. Now to Bob Schieffer in Washington for a look at what's ahead on Face the Nation. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning, Charles. We have an expanded version of Face the Nation this morning because we're going to cover this story from every conceivable angle. We're going to start with Secretary of State Colin Powell. We'll hear from New York Senators Chuck Schumer and Hillary Rodham Clinton. We'll hear from the chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, Joe Biden. We'll call in our CBS News correspondents from around the world, including Pakistan. We'll have analysis and all of the latest developments.
Thank you, Bob Schieffer. We will be watching. Ahead, Jerry Bowen on those we've lost.
Early Sunday morning, winter day, breakfast time, they're on their way. They can smell the cinnamon.
Nothing brings my family to the table like these grand cinnamon rolls from Pillsbury. You know, they're not just ordinary cinnamon rolls, they're grands.
Yeah, you can resist that cinnamon kiss from my heart to yours. My heart to yours.
Our guarantee is our promise. If you're not happy with your glasses, you can bring them back. No questions.
That's what LensCrafters' 30-day money-back guarantee is all about.
Pete Sampras knows about One-A-Day's new active multivitamin with more B vitamins and ginseng to enhance energy. One-A-Day. Get active, stay active.
Meet Professor Max Bickford.
I think I deserve better than a B+.
He's dedicated his life to education.
Every time you open your mouth, I'm going to lower your grade.
We could have you fired.
C-.
Stop it!
B+.
But next Sunday, a new professor
Who is that? She was a student of mine 15 years ago.
will give him an education of his own.
You're just threatened because I've actually written books more than 5 people have read.
Oscar winners Richard Dreyfuss and Marcia Gay Harden.
It's not going to be a problem for you now that I'm here, is it?
The Education of Max Bickford premieres CBS next Sunday.
When we speak of the victims of this week's atrocity, we must be careful not to leave the impression that they are simply people who have died. As Jerry Bowen reminds us, we do them far greater honor by remembering them as people who lived.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
There are heavy hearts all across America this Sunday morning. In the mountain town of Moorhead, Kentucky, where friends and family mourned 26-year-old Edward Earhart. Navy officer Earhart was in the Pentagon that awful Tuesday morning.
He is unaccounted for. At this point in time, we're holding on to any hope in hopes that God will deliver him back to us. If not, keep him in the palm of his hand.
Late yesterday, the Pentagon confirmed Edward Earhart is among the dead. In San Francisco, they remembered Tom Burnett. He was on the United jet that was forced down in Pennsylvania. In a last call home, Burnett said he and others were going to try to stop the hijackers. He leaves behind a wife and 3 young daughters.
The whole country is mourning with us, and that is some help.
In Ames, Iowa, Doug and Betty Havlin believe they have lost their son, Tim. Tim Havlin was on the 96th floor of the 2nd World Trade Tower to be attacked. They grieve also for their daughter-in-law, Tim's wife, Amy.
Poor Amy, she has the extra burden. Her brother is a New York City fireman, and he went in to work and was sent down there, and he too is missing. So she's had a double whammy, her husband and her brother.
So many missing and dead. Tom McGinnis, the co-pilot on American Airlines Flight 11, the first jet to hit the World Trade Center. Paige Farley Hackle of Boston, a passenger on the plane. She was headed to Los Angeles to meet her friend Ruth McCourt. Ruth McCourt and her 4-year-old daughter Juliana of New London, Connecticut. They were on the United flight that slammed into the 2nd tower. Improbably, there is even more. Ruth's brother was on the tower's ground floor and escaped. David McCourt is in despair for his wife.
She was loving. She always had a smile. She tried to help
for
others.
Juliana.
She was taken from us because of hate, because of war, and she was the antithesis of this. Why was she involved in this? She didn't do any harm. I can't, at this point, process this. It's so painful.
David McCourt is starting a foundation in Juliana's name to teach children to love, not hate.
Now hold that.
Gina Corcoran got married yesterday in Los Angeles. Her mother, Ellen, was there. Her stepfather, Neil, was not.
He would not want her to stop the wedding.
Neil Mariana had taken a separate flight to California, the hijacked United flight that hit the Trade Center tower. Lisa Frost was also on the plane, coming home to California to start a new job, a new life, said her father, Tom.
My wife and I are just missing our daughter, and we give everything back just to have her back.
And Melissa Hughes, in New York on business, in the North Trade Center tower. She left a haunting voicemail for her husband, Sean, back in San Francisco.
Sean, it's me. I just wanted to let you know I love you, and I'm stuck in this building in New York. A plane hit the building or a bomb went off, we don't know, but there's lots of smoke, and I just wanted you to know that I love you always.
They are the human faces on the unthinkable tragedy, and there are thousands and thousands more like them. And for too many families across America this Sunday morning, there is a grief that is almost unbearable.
From sea to shining sea.
The Home Depot is driving down the cost of home improvement. Great appliance savings are on at the Home Depot. Have no payments and no interest if paid by March 2002 with your Home Depot consumer credit card. Use it on brand name appliances like this 17.6 cubic foot GE refrigerator for only $398. Or this super capacity Maytag washer for just $399. The best brands, all at the guaranteed low price. For great savings, turn to the Home Depot.
Shocking tragedies have occurred and America is in mourning. A long period of uncertainty and recovery awaits us all. The American Red Cross is providing life-saving assistance, including precious blood, food, shelter, and grief counseling. We honor our heroic relief workers, victims, and their families. Please call 1-800-GIVE-LIFE to donate blood or 1-800-HELP-NOW to offer financial support. Together, we can save a life.
Nowhere did the events of this past week hit home as they did in all those communities the dead and missing called home. No one in those places has been left untouched, as Bill Geist can tell you firsthand.
Ridgewood, New Jersey, a small community of old homes, old trees, old values. It's where I live. From here, you can see New York City's skyline 17 miles away. It's a convenient commute to New York's downtown financial district, and every morning hundreds of locals board these trains bound for Wall Street.
Go.
Tuesday, many of them did not come home. At least 12 of our Ridgewood neighbors and possibly many more are still missing in the World Trade Center rubble. Hundreds narrowly escaped with their lives. The entire town has been shocked and transformed. Flags fly at half-mast, and they fly everywhere. The Overlook, once a place of beauty and romance, has been turned into a memorial. park where kids skateboard and children line up to see Santa Claus, candlelight vigils are now held.
We lift up to you, Lord, those that struggle to find meaning.
Local churches keep their doors open at all hours. One member of Reverend Tom Marsden's congregation is among the missing.
Folks are stopping in and just spending some time in prayer. Some are using this as a place just to quietly cry.
And everyone in town wants to do something to help.
Please help. Stop to support our country. And we thought we
Children canvass the neighborhoods for donations for the rescue workers. Our local firefighters volunteered to go to the World Trade Center site to aid in rescue efforts.
I believe it's good that we can go over and try to help, you know, some of the people from our town and show them that we're there to support them in the loss of their loved ones. And hopefully we'll be able to do some good today.
The town's Red Cross office is abuzz. Volunteers load supply trucks and answer thousands of calls.
But we really appreciate you calling the Red Cross.
People feel in such an intense, overwhelming need to do something. They want to be there. They want to help try and find somebody. They want to pull away the concrete and the glass. I mean, these people, they don't ask, would it be risky?
Yes. At a time like this, we welcome everyone.
Their disaster relief class is standing room only these days.
The worst in the human spirit was experienced, and it's brought out the most glorious in the human spirit, I believe. And that's what we're seeing even here in Ridgewood.
When you see little knots of cars and people in this town, it's normally for a happy social occasion like a backyard barbecue or a child's birthday party. Now these clusters are somber gatherings of friends and neighbors trying to comfort a family and shoulder some of the grief. My friend, John Van Devender, went to work on an early train Tuesday bound for his office on the 92nd floor of the North Tower of the World Trade Center. During the attacks, he talked with his wife and son a few times on the telephone. Then the building collapsed, and he has not been heard from since. By his wife, Annie, their 14-year-old son, John, and their two daughters, Janie, 9, and Molly, 5. Janie still tries to reach him on his cell phone. Annie has told her children that their father is probably not coming home.
And I do believe with all my heart that things happen for a reason, and something will come out of this. If it's just that my children are stronger people for having gone through this, or something good has to come of this, because it's so awful that this can't just have happened for no reason. I have no regrets. We knew we were lucky, and we would tell each other all the time how lucky we were. And we used to tell the kids how lucky we were, the 5 of us. And
she's found strength in visiting others in town who are also missing loved ones in this disaster.
I kept saying, I feel so sorry I'm for myself. And somehow visiting the other women yesterday, I don't know, something lifted. And I know, again, I'm not alone. Just driving Molly to school this morning, all the flags. And I just to know that so many people care.
To this tranquil town that has always provided a refuge from the pressures, problems, and pandemonium of the outside world, monstrous evil has come from distant lands, set upon New York, and reached its deadly tentacles up these tracks. It has left untold misery in this town, where people are asking how this could happen and why. And it may be the children who are asking the toughest questions of all. When my friend Annie told her daughter that God would pull her father up to heaven from this massive disaster, 5-year-old Molly asked, "Does God have enough hands?"
Folgers Decaf. Really good coffee. Folgers Decaf. Really good coffee.
While Mike was putting up his own for sale sign, someone was helping his neighbors John and Diane with plans to sell their home. As Mike spent Saturday figuring out legal agreements and guessing his home's value, someone was preparing a counteroffer so John could help at the school fundraiser. And while Mike and his wife were reevaluating their asking price for the 3rd time, someone was closing the sale on John and Diane's home. You've got a life. We let you live it. We're realtors. Real estate is our life.
In this time of need, the American Red Cross is profoundly grateful for your generous outpouring of support. A long period of uncertainty and recovery awaits us all. Please maintain your resolve to donate blood. Call 1-800-GIVE-LIFE to schedule an appointment, and please be persistent. Again, call 1-800-GIVE-LIFE. Together, we can save a life.
We leave you this morning at another place here on this island of Manhattan. The Conservatory Garden in Central Park seems a world away from the carnage many blocks to the south. Here, the flowers are constant reminders of the beauty of life. Conservatory Garden at Central Park in New York City. I'm Charles Osgood. We hope you'll join us here again next Sunday morning.
Experience you can trust. CBS News. This fall, only one network has it all.
CBS.
CBS. CBS. CBS. The best comedies.
Carry me upstairs and have your way with me.
Favorite dramas.
There's always a clue.
Movies. Specials.
Grammy goes to
news and sports. And the most anticipated new shows of the season. Including Survivor Africa. All the best.
It's all here.
It's all here.
It's all here.
It's all here on CBS.
My hope is that one day we will do more for the people of developing nations by answering the cry for family planning services. And one day there will no longer be a third world. There will only be one world.
Visit the Nature Conservancy on the web at nature.org.